Ladies and gentlemen, today as we rise to meet this new day, let us pause and reflect on the incredible privilege we have to be led by God. In a world filled with noise, distractions, and chaos, there is a divine invitation extended to each of us. Allow God to lead you beside still waters. What does it mean to be led beside still waters? It speaks to a place of peace, rest, and restoration. In the midst of life storms, there is a quiet place where God desires to bring us, a place of serenity where His presence heals and refreshes our souls. In Psalm 23:2-3, the scripture says, "He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul." Notice that it is not our own strength that brings restoration, but God's guiding hand. Often we find ourselves caught in the rush of life, striving, seeking answers, feeling the weight of worry. But God calls us to trust Him, to surrender to His guidance, and to allow Him to lead us to a place of stillness where He can restore us. In a world where noise, stress, and uncertainty seem to dominate every moment of our lives, there is a powerful, almost forgotten invitation waiting for us. Allow God to lead you beside still waters. It is a call to step away from the chaos and to find peace in His presence. Imagine for a moment a life where you can find rest for your soul, where you don't have to strive constantly, where you don't have to battle the noise and distractions. This is the kind of life God offers us. A life where He leads us beside still waters. We all know what it feels like to be caught up in the whirlwind of everyday life. The weight of responsibilities, the pressure to succeed, the struggles we face. It can all be overwhelming. It's easy to get lost in the noise of our minds and the world around us, constantly pushing forward, chasing after the next thing. But even in the middle of all of this, God is calling us to a place of stillness, to a place where His peace can settle deep within us. And this peace isn't like the fleeting calm we sometimes experience after the storm is past. No, this is a deep, unshakable peace. The kind of peace that stays with us no matter the circumstances. It's easy to look around and feel the anxiety rising. We live in a fast-pacing world, a world where the pressure to keep up can feel crushing. But beloved, in the midst of all this, God offers us something so much better. He invites us to leave the noise behind and walk with Him to a place of rest. When we are led beside still waters, we are not just stepping into a peaceful environment. We are stepping into a moment of profound connection with God, where His presence brings comfort and strength. It's in those moments of stillness, when the world around us quiets down, that we can hear God's voice more clearly, and we can feel His peace flooding our hearts. The Bible reminds us in Psalm 103, verses 3, that God makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. These aren't just words on a page. They are promises for us to claim. God is not just a distant observer of our struggles. He is the one who leads us to a place of rest where our souls can be restored. He is the one who knows the depth of our pain, the weight of our worries, and the longing of our hearts. And He promises to bring us to a place where all of that can be healed. But it requires us to trust Him. The key here is trust. We must trust that God knows the path to peace better than we do. Too often, we try to navigate life on our own, thinking that if we just keep pushing, if we just keep moving forward, we'll eventually find the peace we're looking for. But God's way is different. He doesn't tell us to keep running or striving. He tells us to stop, to surrender, and to allow Him to guide us. When we allow God to lead us beside still waters, we give Him the opportunity to restore us in ways we could never do on our own. This isn't about simply finding a quiet place in nature or taking a break from our busy schedules. This is about letting God's peace invade the very core of who we are, letting His presence calm the storms within us. It's about creating space for Him to speak to our hearts and renew our minds. In these moments of stillness, we are reminded that we are not alone. God is with us, leading us, and He is more than able to restore every part of our being. When we take time to allow God to lead us beside still waters, we are not just receiving a temporary moment of peace. We are receiving an eternal, soul-deep peace that will sustain us through the challenges of life. It's a peace that doesn't depend on our circumstances, but on God's faithfulness. This peace is a reminder that even when the world around us is spinning out of control, we are safe in His arms. Today, as you face the demands and distractions of life, remember that you don't have to carry it all alone. God is calling you to a place of rest. He is inviting you to surrender your worries, your fears, and your burdens to Him. Allow Him to lead you beside still waters, where His peace will restore you, renew you, and carry you through whatever comes your way. Trust in His leading, embrace His peace, and let your soul be refreshed. In life, we often search for peace, for moments of calm where we can breathe, reset, and restore ourselves. Yet no matter how much we search, we often find ourselves coming up empty, like a well that never fills. But there is one promise that stands firm. When we allow God to lead us, He brings us to a place of restoration. It's a place where we don't just find temporary relief, but true restoration for our souls. The world may offer us fleeting moments of rest, but the peace that God provides is unlike any other. It's deep, transformative, and it restores every part of us. When God leads us beside still waters, it's not simply an invitation to take a break from the busyness of life. It's an invitation to surrender, to allow Him to guide us to a place where our brokenness can be healed. You see, we live in a world that tells us to keep pushing, to keep striving, to never stop moving forward. But that constant drive to achieve, to be successful, to do more, can leave us exhausted, worn down, and overwhelmed. We pour out our energy, our emotions, and our time, hoping that somewhere in the hustle we'll find what we're looking for. But what we often miss is that the true restoration we seek comes not through our own strength, but through God's guidance. God doesn't just offer us a quick fix. He offers us something far greater. He offers us the opportunity to experience a complete restoration of our soul. When we surrender to His leading, we allow Him to take us to places within ourselves that need healing, areas we may have ignored, buried, or overlooked. And in those quiet, still moments by the waters, God works to restore us from the inside out. Prayer runs the gamut from Buddhism to Babinaji. He doesn't just restore our energy, He restores our hearts, our minds, our very spirits. He reminds us of our worth, of His unconditional love, and of the peace that only He can provide. There's something deeply emotional about being led beside still waters. It's not just a peaceful place, but a place where we can lay down the weight of the world. A place where the anxieties, fears, and worries that have held us captive for so long can finally be released. It's in these moments that we allow God to refresh us, not just on the surface, but in the deepest parts of our being. His restoration isn't shallow, it's profound. It touches the places in us that have been hurt, damaged, or left longing for something more. And in the stillness of His presence, those broken parts of us are healed. The beauty of this restoration is that it doesn't depend on our ability to fix ourselves. We don't have to earn it or figure it out on our own. God's restoration comes freely to those who are willing to trust Him, to allow Him to lead them. And in that trust, we find a peace that doesn't come from the absence of problems, but from the presence of God. It's a peace that surpasses understanding, a peace that transcends our circumstances. It's the kind of peace that settles deep within us, even when the world around us is in chaos. When we allow God to lead us beside still waters, we stop running on empty. We start trying to fill the voids with temporary distractions or achievements. Instead, we open ourselves to the living water that only He can provide. His restoration is lasting. It's not just about feeling better for a moment. It's about being transformed from the inside out. Every broken part of us, every wounded area is touched by His healing hand. We are not just healed in our bodies, but in our hearts, our minds, and our spirits. As God leads us beside still waters, He also brings a clarity that we may have been lacking. In the quiet, we can hear His voice more clearly. It's in these still moments that we begin to understand the depth of His love for us. We begin to see ourselves through His eyes, not as failures or mistakes, but as beloved children who are worthy of His peace and restoration. This clarity is part of the restoration process, as it shifts our perspective from one of fear and anxiety to one of faith and trust in His promises. When we allow God to restore us, we step into a new kind of life, one where we are no longer defined by our struggles or our past. We are defined by His love, His grace, and the peace He brings. The restoration that God offers isn't just for today, but for every day. It's a peace that can be carried with us no matter what we face. It gives us the strength to keep moving forward, knowing that we are never alone, that we are always led beside still waters. And it's in this restoration that we find the fullness of life that God desires for us. Life can sometimes feel like an overwhelming race, where it seems like we're always chasing after something. We chase after success, after approval, after material things, after validation. And in the process, we forget to simply live. We forget that there is something far more important than the endless chase, trusting God's guidance. We often think we have to control everything, fix everything, and make sure we are always one step ahead. But the reality is, the more we try to control, the more we slip away from peace and rest. The moment we stop trying to control and start trusting in God's guidance, that's when true peace enters. Trusting God's guidance is not about understanding everything or having all the answers right away. It's about letting go of the need to have every detail figured out and surrendering to the one who knows the end from the beginning. It's a daily act of faith, choosing to believe that God's plan is greater than ours, even when we can't see the full picture. It's in these moments of surrender that we begin to experience a peace that transcends the turmoil of life. There's something incredibly freeing about trusting God. The moment we release our fears, anxieties, and need for control into His hands, we are no longer carrying the heavy weight of the world on our shoulders. It's like stepping into a space where the pressure to perform, to be perfect, and to have everything figured out fades away. God calls us to trust Him, not because He wants us to give up, but because He knows what's best for us. When we trust in His guidance, we are giving Him the permission to lead us into the peace we desperately seek. It's not easy to trust, especially when the road ahead is unclear, when the challenges seem too great, or when life has knocked us down time and time again. But this is where faith comes in. Faith that God's ways are higher than our ways. Faith that He sees the path that leads to our healing, our peace, and our restoration. Trusting God is not a one-time decision. It's a constant practice. Every time life presents a challenge, we must choose to trust Him. Every time fear tries to take over, we must choose to trust Him. Even when the world tells us we can't, God says, trust me. I will lead you beside still waters. There is an incredible sense of peace that comes from knowing that we are not walking alone. When we trust in God's guidance, we invite His presence to walk with us, to guide us, and to protect us. The stress of trying to figure everything out on our own fades away. because we know that God is walking beside us every step of the way. It's not about having all the answers, but about trusting that He has a plan for our lives and that He is working everything out for our good, even when we can't see it yet. In the moments of doubt, when it feels like everything is falling apart, trusting God's guidance is the anchor that keeps us grounded. We may not understand why certain things happen or why we face the challenges we do, but we can trust that God's love is greater than any fear or uncertainty we may face. Trusting God gives us the strength to endure the difficult seasons, to keep going when we feel like giving up, and to find peace in the midst of the storm. What's beautiful about trusting God's guidance is that it's not about our own ability to make things happen. It's about surrendering to His ability to lead us. The more we trust Him, the more we experience His peace. A peace that doesn't make sense to the world. A peace that doesn't depend on circumstances, but a peace that comes from knowing that God is in control. It's a peace that carries us through the darkest valleys and the toughest times. Choosing to trust God is choosing to let go of the control we cling to and embrace the peace He offers. It's letting go of the pressure to have it all figured out and allowing Him to lead us into a future filled with hope and purpose. Trusting God is not a passive act. It's an active decision to place our faith in His perfect will. As we trust Him, we find ourselves being led beside still waters, a place where peace flows freely, a place where our souls are restored, and a place where we can finally breathe easy. Trusting God doesn't mean life will be easy, but it does mean we can walk through life with the confidence that He is guiding us every step of the way. In a world that constantly demands more from us, there's a deep longing within our hearts for stillness. The noise of life is overwhelming. The constant chatter of worries, expectations, deadlines, and struggles. We feel the pressure to keep moving, to always be doing, to always be achieving. But what if the key to true peace isn't found in doing more, but in being still? The still waters that God promises us are not just a physical place. They are a state of being. They represent a place where our hearts, minds, and spirits can find true rest and renewal. Stillness is not the absence of activity, but the presence of peace. It's when we stop striving, stop fighting against the current, and let ourselves be held by God's love. It's when we stop trying to control every outcome and allow His peace to flood our hearts. Stillness is not passive. It's an active choice to step back and surrender to God's leading. It's a decision to trust that in the quiet, in the waiting, and in the surrender, God is working on our behalf. It's in these moments of stillness that God can heal the wounds we've been carrying, restore our energy, and remind us of our true purpose. Imagine a moment when you finally let go of the constant noise in your head, the anxiety about the future, the regret over the past, the worries that keep you up at night. In that moment, you step into a space of profound peace. It's like stepping into a calm, clear river that flows gently but steadily, washing away the heaviness of life. This is what it means to be beside still waters. It's a place where we can breathe deeply, where our spirits are refreshed, and where we are reminded that we are not alone. When we allow God to lead us beside still waters, we are also opening ourselves up to His presence in ways that we can't experience in the noise of the world. It's in stillness that we hear His voice more clearly. The distractions of life fade into the background, and we can hear His gentle whisper guiding us, comforting us, and reminding us of His love. In the busyness of life, it's so easy to overlook the small, quiet moments where God speaks. But when we choose stillness, we make space for His voice to be heard. Stillness is not an absence. It's an invitation to listen, to lean in, and to receive. The still waters are also a place of restoration. In our fast-paced and constantly moving world, it's easy to become worn out and exhausted. Our bodies and minds can only take so much before we start to feel the weight of the world bearing down on us. But God offers us a place where we can rest, not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually. It's in the stillness that we find the strength to keep going, the clarity to make better decisions, and the peace to face whatever comes next. The restoration that God offers doesn't just patch us up. It renews us from the inside out. It revives the parts of us that have been neglected, weary, or broken. In the stillness, we are reminded that we don't have to do it all on our own. We don't have to fight against the current, struggle to keep up, or carry the weight of the world. God is with us, guiding us and offering us his peace. We can rest in the assurance that he is in control. The still waters are a reminder that we are safe in his care, that he knows exactly what we need, and that his peace is available to us, no matter what life throws our way. It's not always easy to find stillness in our hectic world. The temptation to keep moving, to keep achieving, to keep working can be overwhelming. But it's in the stillness that we find the strength to keep going. It's in the stillness that we reconnect with who we truly are. Not defined by what we do, but by who God says we are. In the stillness, we find our true worth, our true purpose, and our true peace. The still waters are where our souls are restored and where we are reminded that we are enough, just as we are. Stillness doesn't mean inactivity, it means allowing God to work within us. It's in those quiet moments when we let go of our need to control that we can experience the true peace and restoration that only God can provide. As we allow God to lead us beside still waters, we step into a space where his presence fills us, his peace heals us, and his love restores us. It's in the stillness that we can finally be at rest, knowing that everything is in his hands.
Ladies and gentlemen, we all experience moments of unrest and uncertainty. There are days when it feels as if everything is crumbling, when the weight of our worries and burdens presses heavily upon our hearts. In those moments, we often feel lost, disconnected, and desperate for peace. But what if I told you that, even in the midst of the storms of life, there is a place of comfort, of renewal, and of peace that is available to you? This place is not far away or hard to find. It's simply a matter of surrendering our hearts and trusting in God's guidance. The morning prayer for guidance and peace is the key that opens the door to that very place of peace. And to you, it is the most tender season. And to you, it is the most tender place of peace. Morning is a powerful time of day. As the sun rises, we are given the opportunity to start fresh, to set the tone for the day ahead. It's in these first moments that we can invite God's presence into our lives, surrendering our plans, our fears, and our desires into his hands. When we begin our day with a prayer for guidance and peace, we are acknowledging that we cannot do it all on our own. We are recognizing that we need God's direction to navigate the challenges we will face. And in doing so, we are inviting his peace to flood our hearts and minds, even before the world starts pulling at us. The beauty of a morning prayer for guidance and peace is that it doesn't matter what yesterday looked like, or how heavy the burdens of life may feel. When we come before God in the morning, we are giving him permission to lead us, to restore us, and to guide us on the path of peace. The morning prayer is not just a request for comfort, but a declaration of trust in God's ability to direct our steps. It's a statement of faith that no matter what comes our way, we are confident in his wisdom and his love. In these moments of prayer, we surrender our own understanding and open ourselves up to God's will. We ask for his guidance in every area of our lives, in our relationships, our work, our health, and even in our thoughts and emotions. We ask for his peace to settle in our hearts, a peace that transcends our circumstances, a peace that doesn't depend on what's happening around us, but on the certainty of His presence within us. This prayer is an invitation to let go of the anxiety and stress that we carry, and to trust that God has everything under control. It's a reminder that we don't have to figure it all out, that we don't have to carry the burden of perfection or success. All we need to do is surrender. The power of a morning prayer is that it sets the foundation for the day ahead. When we begin our day with God, we start with peace, and that peace can carry us through whatever comes next, whether it's a challenge at work, a difficult conversation, or an unexpected turn of events. The peace that comes from God is unshakable. It's a peace that strengthens us, that gives us the ability to remain calm in the face of chaos, and that fills our hearts with hope even when things seem impossible. As we pray, we are also aligning ourselves with God's purpose for our lives. We acknowledge that our own plans may not always be the best, but that His plans are perfect. When we ask for His guidance, we are asking for clarity, for wisdom, and for understanding. We are inviting Him to lead us to places of growth, to opportunities that align with His will, and to people who will encourage us on our journey. The morning prayer is not just a petition for peace, but a request for divine direction in everything we do. There is something incredibly beautiful about starting your day with a prayer for guidance and peace. It's a moment of surrender, of laying down your own desires and plans and trusting that God knows what's best for you. It's a moment where you acknowledge that you are not in control, but that God is, and that He is faithful to lead you beside still waters. It's in these quiet moments of prayer that we are reminded of who we are in God's eyes, not defined by our mistakes or shortcomings, but by His love and His purpose for our lives. And as we ask for His peace, we are reminded that His peace is not just a feeling, but a deep, abiding presence that will carry us through every storm. Morning prayer for guidance and peace is not just a ritual, but a way of life. It's a practice that we can incorporate into every day, every moment. And as we continue to make it a part of our routine, we begin to experience the peace that comes from knowing that God is with us, guiding us, and leading us to places of restoration and peace. His peace is not fleeting. It is a constant companion, available to us every single day. So as you begin each morning, remember to surrender your heart to Him. Allow Him to lead you, to guide you, and to fill you with His peace. And watch as His peace transforms every part of your life.